Good morning, Quasar Markets Live. Happy Friday the 13th to everybody. You have Howard Hondo Greenberg here, your host, and I have, at least for a little while here, I was able to get the big man back in this morning, Stephen Big Beat Orr, the CEO and founder of Quasar Markets. Big Beat, how we doing today?
I'm good. I felt like wearing my Jason mask, and the boogeyman is out today. It's September. It's the fall, getting closer to the fall. And you know what? After the news of Boeing yesterday, everybody want to strike, and losses of jobs. It just seems that everybody's still nervous right now in the markets, and but yet we continue to seep up. So there's a big disconnect here with Main Street and Wall Street.
Yeah, it does seem to be that way, like you said, a little heckle and jive. Heckle and jive. Uh, Jekyll and Hyde. I was talking to you about that a little earlier here. The thing that's kind of interesting to me, confusing to me, maybe you can help me with, gold, all-time highs, right? S&P
Yeah.
though, also almost at all-time highs. That's not normally the correlation we see, is it?
Yeah, look, it's the buyers of each one of those, right? So the buyers in the stock market seem to be those that are more retail, more. We are seeing a little bit of institutional, but we're seeing buyers in the ETF world, right? But in the precious metals world, we are seeing usual buyers when there is geopolitical tension. And we just saw this morning that Germany just sent a warboat over into the Straits of Taiwan.
I saw that for the
We are
first
now
time, and that's
seeing
that's a big deal because it's the first time in a long
ever.
time.
Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
very long time. And I'll tell you the other thing that bothered me last night, North Korea implemented and told everybody we now can make weapon grade plutonium and
Plutonium.
uranium. That is a big problem. You're starting to see some tension in the world, and buyers of it are Russia. Buyers of gold are countries that believe that the world is going to end, and that's what they're doing. And I'm hearing numbers now are fading out that $3,000 an ounce is not off the bench here to buy.
Wow, that would be amazing. And like you said, I think part of that too is I was reading a lot of reports here over the last couple of days where wealth managers had been talking about they had moved a lot of their people into cash holdings. There was 5%, pretty much easy 5% returns. And now that they're having to fight with their clients to get them to move out of cash because it was such a non-stressful trade. Every once in a while you need that reset, right? You're like, listen, let me get a month of just 5%. I'll take it, and I won't fight the market today. So that could that maybe be where that gold buyer is coming to? Is that's the answer? Is they're looking to deploy some of this cash that they've had sitting on the sidelines?
Well, I've also seen, Howard, where Wells Fargo actually upped the interest rate on cash holdings, money market money, in the bigger wealth management teams because they wanted to hold some of that cash. Banks need cash. Now, that is true that we've lowered the requirements from 19% to now down to 9%. Wow.
Right.
Um, Needing cash in the bank. If there's no cash in the bank, then it becomes harder and harder for a person to borrow money, even when rates are coming down and people are waiting to borrow money to buy a house or buy a car, and there's no cash in the bank to buy it. That becomes a
Yeah,
problem.
well, it's funny you say that because again, something that I don't think enough people understand is that there is that finite amount of money in the money supply at the banks that they're using. So just because rates do go down, don't mean they're going to give you that rate.
Right.
And that's what happens, right? They shop it around. It becomes, the better credit you have, you might get that, better interest rate on like you said, at the wealth division of a JP Morgan or a Wells or somebody else. You might see that, but not, your average consumer. So, yeah, that's another one that I didn't really realize also, back in the day. Been watching the DXY overnight. I'll pull that up here on our macro. Look at the markets. It had broken back down below 101. It is back below 101. So seeing some weakness versus the basket of international currencies. I know you're not surprised by it. You've been talking about it all week.
Yeah, I mean, watching the dollar, I tell you the interesting one there, and I have been watching it quite closely, is the yen to the dollar. And look, we're at now the basket of Dixie is now sitting at 100.95, right below the 101 once again. When it gets into 100, it seems like to be a buy. When it gets over 101, it's a sell. There seems to be somewhat of a feel where we have a trading range in the Dixie. Remember, the Dixie is based against the basket, the euro, the yen, the pound, and the Swiss franc. Um, Look, to me, the dollar is what's controlling everything in the markets right now. It's not precious metals. It's not oil. It is a little bit oil, I guess,
Oil.
but it to me it is the dollar, how the dollar is changing, and also silver. Silver, it's really leading the markets. Why? Because that's what the poor man's gold, and that's where the retail are. I'll also tell you that this market is one thing and one thing only right now. It is controlled by the computers right now. Algo trading right now is so prevalent in these markets that, I don't want to fight the machines right now. Why is it so prevalent, Steve? Well, it's very simple. Because the volume is so low. These big firms are not trading. We know that they're not
Right.
trading. I mean, JP Morgan told us that. Trading revenue is down 10%. Goldman Sachs told you that. IBKR told you that. Trading revenue is down. So it's not you and me that are trading. It's not institutionals and hedge funds that are trading. It's these algos, and they're trading little bits and pieces, and they're trying to make some money. But trading revenue is way down. So we know that. So
Right.
I'm not fighting these computers.
I will say, with like you said, oil was good to see has moved back up a little bit. WTI broke through 70 here this morning, up about 1.1%. Part of that, I was talking to you a little bit earlier. One of the things I watch is the ETF, inflows and outflows. And not going to lie, I watch it because it's important to Bitcoin. So that's what sort of started me in there. But I've noticed a little bit of a defensive posturing as we've seen the ETFs, the tech ETFs, the Bitcoin ETF. All of those sort of markets sort of get sold off. But what we've seen is utilities pick up. Your defensive stocks, financial service areas, consumer staples picked up. So is that the cyclical move you've been expecting to see?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, cyclical moves, interestingly enough. Well, with oil, let's go back to oil first of all. We know that the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, that's the reserve that we have in case things go wrong in the country. In the past, we've had roughly a 30 days to 45, 60 days at some points reserve. Let me just think about that for a second. At the height of the oil in this country, and we are now an exporter of oil, not an importer of oil anymore. At the height of this, a 60-day reserve. So that means if the world were to go to hell in a handbasket, 60 days of oil and we're done.
Yeah.
COVID lasted 2.5 years, roughly 2 years, right? Off and on. Think about that for a second. Right now we're down to about 30 days, and oil is down to about 60. Looks like 60. Oh, well, there you go. Hit $70 a barrel now. So we know that some oil has been purchased down here. We don't have enough oil, so there is a floor in oil. 68.50, 67, somewhere around there. There is a floor. That floor keeps up the prices of gasoline and lipstick and plastic and all the things that comes out of oil. Yes, lipstick's made of oil, by the
Oh
way.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, that we have to question whether or not the government is buying down there and creating an artificial floor. Once the government stops buying, let's say for example we have a 30 days, we get to about 30 days. Right now we're about 18 or 19 days supply. Let's get to 30 days. And the government, that's normal time. There's no floor on oil. Then the oil could drop really hard, like the 65, 64, 60s, $55 a barrel. Yes, 3 years ago,
I was
oil
gonna say
dropped
we saw that. I was in the room with you that
negative.
day. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
was with
Oil
you
went
that day when it
negative.
went negative. That
And I
was
bought oil. I thought that was
yeah.
crazy.
That
Thank
was
you, Mr.
insane. That
Wellmarket.
was insane. I remember making a ton of money on Marathon Oil during that time on
That's
your
right.
advice.
And you know
Yeah.
what? Those companies, and you know what's going to happen when oil. So a lot of people don't understand that oil prices dictate what the margins are for these big companies. All right,
Yeah.
let's take for Marathon example. If you just said Marathon, great, or ExxonMobil. If an oil company is drilling, let's say they're drilling out in the Gulf. Let's say they're drilling new holes. That depends on the costs, right? So there's costs involved for moving a big rig out in the Gulf, or in this case North Sea for Brent. It's not cheap. It's very expensive to move rigs. It's very expensive to drill holes. We know there's holes out there, and we know that where they're at. Or is it? Or do we drill in Texas or Alaska, where we already own the fields and we know where they're at? Or do we just, what the oil companies have done for decades? Most people don't know this, but they'll drill a hole and they'll find oil and they will not pump it. They
Until they
will
need it.
put a
Yeah.
bow on it. They'll put a number on that well, and we'll leave it alone. Why? Because they're waiting for prices to come up. Now, in the oil markets, most companies, if you are not a driller, you're just a straight pumper, like ExxonMobil, things of that company, then they only need about $35 to $50 a barrel of oil, depending on the spread. I can go into crack spreads later. We'll talk about that later. But let's talk about oil for a second. If they are looking at oil and they are trying to drill for oil in the Gulf, that's way more expensive. Then they need $65 a barrel. So 65 to 70 is only at $5. Is it worth it to them? Nope. And guess what happens? They don't pump. They don't. They just put a nice little bow on it, wait till the price goes back up. And then they create an artificial supply issue. Um, the other problem, right, we're having now is refining the oil. Most people don't know that, but oil isn't just about gasoline. It's only about 25% of a barrel is gasoline. So when there is a huge there are only 22, I think, 22 refiners in the world. A lot of them are in Texas and Louisiana. Why? Because it's close to where the oil is, right? There's some in California, there's some up north a little bit. For the most part, and that's where the pipelines are. You probably heard the word Keystone. You probably heard the word Permian line. These are lines that come out, and I always tell everybody, if you want to be in oil, look at the flow, right, where the oil flow is going. Right now, most of these refinery machines are back in the 60s and 70s. They haven't been upgraded or changed. They're just being fixed. It's like banging a hammer against a line or something. There's only one new one, and I think that was in the late 90s, 2000. We have a problem because now there's a glut of oil sitting outside of these refineries, and they can't make it fast enough, right?
Right.
So there could be a major crack spread. So a crack spread is the spread of breaking up the oil and what the costs are. So people go, well, why is gasoline still $3 and $4 a gallon and oil prices are down? Well, that's exactly why I've been trying to tell you. And oil is also, gasoline is also taxed heavily. It's probably the most taxed thing on the planet. So when you look at all of those things, how does that affect the stock market? Well, when you got to move products, guess what? It takes trucks to move it. It takes railroads to move it. And I think because of all of this, if you do see this oil prices go through the roof, I think you're going to see Mr. Warren Buffett smiling all the way to the bank because he owns the railroads
Right.
and
Absolutely.
BNSF and Burlington Northern Santa Fe, if you don't know. And look, these are problems, right? And guess what? The trucking industry hurts because when prices go up in gasoline, it costs more to truck. And it hurts vacationers. It hurts airplanes. Jet fuel gets, all of these things are affected. That's why. So when people ask me, how is the stock market affected by the oil prices? Well, I'll tell you the one little thing you should all be thinking about, and that's called Dow theory. Dow theory says if the transportations lead, so think of it like FedEx and UPS and all of those, they will tell you where the stock market's going. And right now, the stock market seems to be at a high because I think the oil markets are really pricing, and I think we're pretty much done. I think the market's pulling back. I have sold all my Nvidias, most people know, and I'm holding back. I think you're pulling up a CME FedWatch chart here.
I am. I am. I wanted to talk to you about the dystopian trader right now. Like you said, I think people, one thing that I love about you always is you have a thesis that lasts more than 24 hours.
Yes.
Because I can't get my hands around it. Last week we looked, and this is what FedWatch looked like. It was close to a 50-50 spread on whether or not we're going a quarter basis point or a half basis point at the FOMC next Wednesday. It moved up yesterday to like 80% 0.25. What happened? What's going on here, Big V?
I've been saying it since last year. We're going to have two cuts this year. and the narrative around the Fed has changed. We have seen the Fed talk about, oh well, we need to get inflation down to 2%. Inflation has to. This is our mandate from Congress, folks. We have to do this. I got to do this. Guess what? Inflation is not at 2% yet. Um, well, our mandate's also to keep jobs. Okay, well, okay. Guess what? Jobs losses are heavy. So what's more important? Job losses? Yeah, because the job's losing, people don't pay their taxes. Fed doesn't have a job. So
Yeah.
guess what? We got to do that. I've said this. I've said this many times. You want to know what the world's doing? Get a haircut. I got a haircut yesterday. Guess what? The first thing out of everybody's questions was, "Hey, Steve, when are interest rates coming down?" Hey, you were right. Rates are coming down. Yes, they're coming down, and they're going to come down even more. Um, and I think they're going to come down quite heavily. Problem is, I took an Uber home from a haircut. Guy was an Uber driver. What did he say to me? Hey, I'm also a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Okay. So I come home and there's two homes on my street that are for sale that haven't sold. Why? Because people are holding out. They're not buying homes because they think rates are coming down. That's why you're seeing a 50% to 80% chance of a 50 basis point cut because they're expecting now the Fed to cut. We've been waiting to figure out who the president of the United States is going to be. I think everybody now knows it's going to be Kamala Harris. I've said this now several times. This is not a political show. We don't care about the presidency. We care about the policies. But we
Right.
need to, we
And
understand.
part of that you brought up this morning in when we were talking is, that unemployment, 4.4% of employed workers that were interviewed are worried about their job. That doesn't sound like a lot. It is the highest point since they started tracking this in
Yeah.
like 2004. That blew me away, I see it. I brought it up as when we looked at the labor numbers last week, right? I said to you, everyone's all focused on the job creation. What I was looking at was there wasn't that many layoffs yet, but we're also seeing that about 28% of these people that were surveyed are also looking for jobs currently because they're worried about losing their jobs. So never mind that 4.4% that are actually worried. That number is deceiving because it seems low, but 28.4 is saying, hey, I got my resume all tuned up. I'm paying for the monthly myperfectresume.com, and I'm out there looking. So that really surprised me too, and it does show why we see that. We see that weakening in the labor market. Now, I think the employee might be more worried than the employer currently. You
Well,
know,
as CEO and founder of Quasar Markets, Howard, you don't have to worry about your job, so you're good to
I
go.
appreciate that.
Look,
Where there's not that case, though, is man, I mentioned when we were looking at Boeing and they had made the deal Sunday with their union that it seemed like everybody was kind of happy. That turned around really quickly. I happen to have some friends pretty high up on the Teamsters side, and they told me that they put pressure on the machinist labor union, that there was a lot of talk that Sean O'Brien wasn't happy with this deal, that he's saying, hey, listen, we've been making moves in the right direction in every labor deal that we've signed in the last year, whether it was the pilots, whether it was the Teamsters, whether it was UPS, and you're setting us back. And I was blown away by the numbers. 94% rejected the deal, so it wasn't even in the ballpark.
right.
you know,
Well,
and and 96 voted to go on strike. Those are big numbers. I watch this stuff a lot. I've always been someone fascinated by labor unions. That's a big number. These things are normally in the 70s, 75, 80% is considered an overwhelming, vote for striking. 96.
when you do a good job at your job, and companies aren't paying you based on what you deserve, right? Let's just say Boeing, right? Um, okay, but Boeing's not doing a good job, and they're
Right.
still striking, and they're still striking. That's telling you where the labor is right now. That they're telling you that there's a little bit more of amongst the workers, shall we say, than there is because what we're seeing is during COVID, the margins at companies they lost lots of money, right? And over the last few years, with all this cash that was sitting out there because of the government handing it out like candy, was now they're now trying to get that money back, and margins are outsized right now. They're way out of whack right now. What it costs to buy something and what it costs to make it, the margins are way out of whack. And these employers are taking notice. So guess what? They're going to strike. But the quality of the work has definitely gone down. You just talked about the Boeing machinist, right? Wanting more and more and more. Okay, they're probably going to get it. They're asking for 25% raise. So
Asking for
that guess,
40%, 40% over 4 years. They got 25. That's what they were offered.
man,
I did a little bit more research into it because, again, like I said, for some reason, I'm a nerd into these things. I love
yeah, I
the
love it.
labor unions and what's going on there. And part of the sticking points is, you got to keep in mind where is Boeing? Pacific Northwest, right? Where has there been some really, really left leaning, changes to the minimum wages? And what was brought up is if you go to work at McDonald's in Seattle, you're getting $21 an hour. Do you know what Boeing's intro wages are for machinists? $21 an hour.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. The same thing that happened to Starlink. That happened in California. Elon Musk packed up his bags in
And moved.
California and moved straight to Texas. You're going to see that because guess what? Those people who work in Texas don't pay state income tax or as much state income tax. Florida has had a huge influx of people, no state income tax. You get a bonus right there the minute that you move to a state that doesn't have no state income
Yeah,
tax.
well, Boeing has the big one in North Carolina. That's what part of this fight was, and now they might have to rethink that decision. They had said they were going to build the Max liner in the Pacific Northwest. Do they start to shop that business, and do they look to North Carolina, Texas, like you said, other areas where maybe there's a more beneficial for them to be non-union? So I was definitely blown away by the numbers there, and I think it's a bad sign for Boeing personally. I don't think this is going to be a quick, easy answer. So that's a tough one to see.
Well, but Boeing has two things always going for it. Number one is they are the best airplane maker in the world, bar none. There's not Airbus. I'm sorry, I like Airbus, but Boeing has the best by far, and so they're always going to have that going for them until that goes down. But the second thing they have is the number of contracts that they have. They are backed up to 3 to 5 years of planes. And the third thing is they have government contracts that we don't even know about on things that we don't even know about. And they have skunk
Right,
works
they're
and all
building a new
kinds.
plane that we don't know about that will be announced in 7 years, and
And
those type of things,
you
right? And I
I
was
mean,
going to
all
say
this,
that it's the same way. There's a couple of things there that you put in play, which is why I've always you've been a fan of Boeing. I know for a long time I have too. Is that moat? You can't just decide you want to build airplanes tomorrow and build
right.
and get up and running. So their competition is Airbus. It is some of the things in Europe and obviously other areas. But there aren't many, and it's not easy for those things to move it. So we are about 7 minutes to the open here. Nasdaq had briefly gone green, back a little red here. My question, Steve: 5 straight days S&P has gone up here. Are we gonna make? Or excuse me, 4 days. Are we gonna make it a 5-day win streak?
No.
I tend to be with you here. Like I said, though, I think a muted start, what I'm looking at, muted start, I think gives us a little bit of momentum. We can just sort of trudge our way up. I think any kind of jump at the open will get sold off very quickly in a profit taking. I see a lot of that. The Reddit guys out there, Wall Street Bets, as I've been looking at, the stuff there, it seems like they're a little antsy. And I think at the first sign of the ability to take some profit today, I think we will see some profit taken
Yeah, it's
across the
probably taking
board.
Friday. And I also think you're going to see probably around 2 o'clock today when you see these weeklies get pulled. I think they're going to be a pretty. Well, I'm not going to say at 2 o'clock, but just say 2 to 3. I think you'll see some serious volatility at 2 to 3 o'clock today.
Yeah, I do agree with that. When the expiries hit, I think we'll see everybody sort of scramble to get their positions in for the weekend, and go from there. Uh,
Silver $30.60 an ounce, baby.
yeah, now up 2.5% on the day. Look at that runaway chart, man. Does that make a run back towards this
I still
32
think we're
level
going to.
today?
I think we're going to 50 in the next year. Within the next year, I think we're
Wow.
$50 an ounce.
That's a huge call out by Steve here, guys. I don't know if you realize that. That's about, we're at $30. That's a
I called that was
80%.
when we were, I
I
called that when we
remember.
were
I know. That's what I'm
$19 an
saying. I'm
ounce.
I'm marking that one down. BB
$16 an ounce,
913
$19 an ounce. I was calling for $30 an ounce.
50.
Silver, or 50
I
fifty
think we're
dollars
going
an
to
ounce.
come back in 6 and 8 months and like that call there, guys. So right here on Quasar Markets Live, you heard that. Let's see what's going on in some of our favorites today. Nvidia down a little bit, not much. Let me take off my drawings from yesterday there. Sorry about that.
AMD up 0.82% here in early trade. I think you're still seeing Unity Software up another 4% today. I like that a lot. Um, yeah, I think profit taking is going to hit today. I really do. I think we're going to see some serious with Nvidia down a bit. That does give some money over to SMCI, to AMD. I think also see some money going into Micron, MU. Uh, Micron's up another 1% today. ARM is up 2.2%. So that Nvidia money is getting spread around a bit. Yeah,
You know
there
what
it
I'd
is.
also say, Steve, that shows you, I think, that the strength of those ETFs right now, too, is a lot of movement in the sector going up and down all at once, like you've been talking about lately, would be the rebalancing of those ETFs, right? Where you
Right.
see, if they're seeing the big outflows, that's going to cause them to sell their shares across the board, too. So I do think we're seeing a little of that. And some of the ones, but I know you have to get out of here in a few minutes, so I want to hit you up to talk about a few things we were looking at over the last couple of days. GM continuing to move up here now between yesterday and today, up over 4%. So that news about them sort of partnering with Hyundai with the EV Go, putting EV out there, charging stations, and then the news that they were tariff looking better in Europe really has GM moving nicely.
Well, I think that when Ford and Hyundai and all these companies say they're not going to do EVs, and then one company says, "Well, we'll do it,"
They get they
guess
get that
what?
quick pump, right? So you're saying I don't buy it. I'm not buying the hype there. I like that. I like that. Sell the news. Let's talk about sell the news. mRNA, Moderna. We saw it yesterday get crushed when they announced that they were going to cut on R&D 20% and everything there. Saw a bunch of downgrades from analysts hitting it even harder. So another 5% down here today. You
I'll tell you
see
the
any
problem with
bottom
Moderna.
there, or you think you're the man in biotech? I stay away from these, especially when they're falling. I'm not trying to catch this knife.
Moderna, did very well during COVID because they were on top of it. I said this during COVID. Look, the thing about COVID was that you need to find companies that are good at making vaccines and making them fast and able to reproduce them. And the companies that I tell you right now that are going to do very well, and I've said this, and you want to make a call. It's one of the stocks I'm going to start to accumulate is Pfizer, PFE. Pfizer has started to be a bottoming here, and I went to get my COVID vaccine again. Don't get political about this, but I read down the bottom it says 12 and a half years of vaccine on the new Pfizer one, so you don't need to get it down every year or two. And you know what? I haven't been sick with COVID, right? And I got my flu shot. Guess what? Is also Pfizer. Pfizer has been on the forefront of that. I like Pfizer here. I think Pfizer's starting to really make a if you look at a daily chart on Pfizer,
I have it up before you right here, Steve. I'll
yeah,
pull up the daily
I'll tell
for
you,
you.
they're really basing here. They pulled back, and it looks like they're trying to find the next move up. Um, and I'll tell you, the other company that I've been talking about in the biotech space is Eli Lilly. That's LLY.
Yeah, you've been all
The
over
other
them.
one, obesity drugs are really good. They make Manjaro, Zepbound. I think they just got an upgrade again today. This thing, look, I think it'll be where you take it, like we take vitamins today. Eli Lilly will probably have a vitamin where you take an obesity pill, right? And it'll be everybody, not just a few people. I think we talked about this. I'm going to talk about it in a few weeks with Schwab. Is that in the future, companies like McDonald's and companies like Wendy's are going to really hurt in the future unless they change their tune and make their burgers a lot a lot leaner. They're going to really hurt because people are just the taste is great, but it's fattening, and there's going to be some fat shaming in the future, I think. because everybody's going to be in pill and everybody's going to have the multivitamin slash Manjaro pill. So,
Well,
all
and
right,
I
here we
also
are.
just think the processed food. Here we go. We are.
Like I said, I don't think that's a big sell off there. I think they'll fix their problems. I think they'll figure it out. Yeah, only down 1.5%. So I I think Boeing could. It's literally bottomed out, to be honest with you. How much worse can it get, right? A lot worse. Okay, great. Well, then what's it going to go to? 150 a share.
Well, it's
Um,
it's sort of like, well, remember when I used to say how many times can China ban Bitcoin?
right.
Because it would just be like, how many times can you beat this company up? Like we've talked about, it isn't like that moat can get replaced. Literally the only answer to that would be if somebody like Lockheed Martin decided to build, more, decided to go into the commercial airline space. That's the only way that moat can get broken. Yeah, I mean, and this is where it's historically found a pretty good area.
Looking
It
at
is still
Bitcoin
going though, 1.76. I think you're gonna see. I think you're gonna see it test these lows at the 155 mark.
now down 2% here.
Yeah, I think it's gonna get down to that 155.
Silver is still pushing 30.62 now.
Yeah,
Now
257. Man. The other one that I started to watch here is the RUT, the U.S. Small Cap 2000, to see what's going on.
yeah.
That's got a little bit of momentum today, about 1.25. But these are these ones that I think are Main Street media led right now. As I told you, that Fed Watch, right? That moved. Why did it move? Because yesterday we saw 3 or 4 articles come out on Wall Street, CNBC, Reuters, Bloomberg, all pushing the narrative that it was going to go zero point 0.5. Next thing you know, that number moves. Same thing. I saw a ton of talk about that restructuring and move into the smaller marks as a defensive move here as we move into the FOMC. What's happening? 1.29 move up on the RUT this morning. So I'll be interested to see if this holds legs here this morning on the small caps, because these are the kind of ones that you see blow off pretty quickly
And
because it's
Intel's up 2% here, Howard. All right, I got to run, Howard, but take them home.
Okay, let's go. Let's talk about what are we looking at in the individual stocks today. Let me switch my screen to just me here. There we go. We're going to take a look here. I was pointing out yesterday that we had a real nice I moved that to the daily. That's why. Give me 1 second here to fix my chart. We had this real nice on the hourly chart. This bull flag. Whoops, I'm in the wrong spot there. Let me delete that. Let me get the proper move here. Here we go. As you can see, I had pointed out yesterday that we had set up in a pretty nice bullish flag here on S&P, and if we broke through, I thought we'd see us continue up most of the day. We've done that. I do think that if we see us here in the 10 o'clock hour break above 561, so I'm calling for 561 here, break above 561 keeps us climbing the rest of the day. Any kind of break back below that 559.30 would be my pivot point, where I think we then do see that profit taking really start to kick in and move from there. So starting to see the first bit of our volume pumpers. So let's take a look at those. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of taking a look at these micro pumpers that have been moving in the mornings. TNON, 10 on medical, up. Holy man, you can't even track that sucker. It is up over 210% here. What does that volume look like? You're seeing 5.52 million in volume in the first 4 minutes of the day. Their average volume is 1.47. Now, here's one that you might be surprised. Normally you would say, I'm not chasing that. It's cut down. I'd be looking here. As you can see, if we can start to form a wedge and get this to hold in a wedge here, you could have something. So we would keep an eye on this. I'm going to add it to my daily watch list here. If we can hold in this area, start to form a wedge, you could see the second move there. What else do we have? ALSAR. ALSAR starting to move. Alpha Star Acquisition Corp. Don't know anything about this one, but it's up 100% here today. Let's get this. There's not enough volume here to actually look at that one, so we're not even going to do that. That one, that's a definite dump and pump. There is no way we would follow that. VMAR, what's going on with VMAR today? Vision Marine Technologies. Here's one here again. So now we've got what we normally see, right? We see the pump up here, take off, play, back down. And now the question is, can we hold ourselves into some sort of wedging triangle and look for the next play up here? This one's interesting because if you can get another volume spike here, this one does look like it could be in play. So VMAR could be in play here. Let me send that off to my man Charlie Moon, see what his views are there. This one could get to play. ATPC, another one here. This one's still in its pump right now. Again, double the daily volume the first 4 minutes of the day. Okay, let's get back into the indices. We do see QQQ here holding up, trying to make a move. Can we get to its highs of the day is the question. 473.80 would get us there. We are trying to push towards it right there. It goes. So, okay, we are trying to move up. Like I said, if we see a big pump, though, what's volume looking like? We got about 39.22 million in volume here. On the average, we're not even at 1 million yet, so we're not seeing a huge volume pump for a Friday. So we could be sustainable here. Let's see what happens. Like I said, I don't want to see a runaway. Runaway has led to a quick pullback. Lately, don't want to see that. We'll mention later today at 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, I will be doing a deeper dive into crypto today, looking more at Bitcoin miners. Got some great information there. Been looking at that. My man Charlie pointed out to me I should take a look at TNON, Tenon Medical. Oh, I already look at that one. Yep. Definitely was looking at that. Charlie told me to look at PLCE, short squeezing here. PLCE for a short squeeze. The Children's Place. Send that out here. PLCE. Tesla moving up nicely today, up almost a point. And look at that, broke out of that wedge that I had been pointing out where it had been consolidating into a smaller thing. I said watch out for an explosive break to one side or the other. Here goes Tesla. Wow, we are seeing now. I'm starting to get nervous. This starts to get into some of that explosive moves in the stocks that tend to have been selling off in the afternoon. You see Tesla moving up, Nvidia up 0.6, AMD up over a point, Intel almost hitting 2 points here, AVGO. So is this rebalancing of these ETFs that I talked about? And for those that don't know, what I'm saying there when I say that there's a rebalancing of these ETFs, when you purchase, you know, the baskets that these companies buy, they're buying them with the amount of money that's in the ETF. So as they get inflows or more institutional money or more retail money moves into an ETF, they have to buy more stock to balance it to keep it at that rates. And, you know, that's what we see happening a lot of times. I feel like in these first 30 minutes lately has been a lot of rebalancing of the ETFs and themselves getting repositioned in. We now see the SPY up almost a quarter of a point. It had hit 560.61 and then it moved from there. Again, I think if we can break to highs here, we keep on going up today. So we are trying 940, so we have got this going in. Let's see what's going on with that PCLE here. Up 12%. This one could go. You can see that hourly linear regression knocked it down so far. You can see here on the daily chart, it's got room to 15. This could go. Another one watching here is Till Instill Bio. Seeing a few of the ones that we had seen earlier in the week also trying to make another move here. SMMT, Summit Therapeutics. It's trying to make another pump here. Up 8%. If it clears 30.15, man, it is going. Look at this. SMMT. Break above 30 there, you could really see it move on Summit here. So definitely one to keep an eye on. What do we got going on with the VIX so far? 1698, so still down low. So again, you know, that part of that is seems like everything is moving up today. If you look at my watch list here on the right, you know, SPY up 0.25, QQQ up 0.27 now, Dow Jones up a quarter of a point. So now we're getting to the point where I'm nervous. We're starting to see everything move up together. Gold, silver. The only thing not catching a bid so far is Bitcoin. It's back below 58. Crude back below 70 on the WTI, so that's interesting, losing a little bit of momentum. But again, Tesla up 1.1, Nvidia up a quarter of a point. All of the micros, 1.19, 1.5 for Intel, Broadcom 1.61, Qualcomm up a point. Apple still not catching a bid yet. We are seeing some of the other large tech like Snowflake, Crowd, Box, GitLab, all up nicely. See, in retail, wow, look at that. Nordstrom's up almost 3%. Same thing, Kohl's 2.31. Man, Abercrombie up 4. This is, yeah, this gets me nervous. Abercrombie got hit hard at the 200 MA here on the hourly chart, as you can see. But we're starting to see that over-exuberance, in my opinion, that has been. Look at this, Oracle, another 3% up. We know it had the big jump yesterday. I mean, man, that price action move. And that's 21% in 2 days. Wow. Affirm, buy now, pay later, up another 2%. They've had a heck of a move lately. If you look at their daily chart here, I'll blow that up a little bit here for us. You can see where they've been. So really trying to make a nice move back up. Got Brown-Forman up 0.5 point here. Constellation Brands. Duckhorn's up 1.5 points. Oof, getting hit here is ASST, Asset Entities. They had made the pump we know last, a couple weeks ago. That's getting hit here. ASTS is starting to move back up, so that had been taking a beating here again since mid-August. So market definitely, so far, everything seems to be moving up. mRNA, Moderna continuing to get hit here. The other one I forgot to talk about was Steve, China, back in the news, Biden administration saying that they're bypassing some of the sanctions. So we'll see that there. Let's take a last look here. What do we have going on? We're starting to see momentum get pulled back on QQQ a little bit here. Dow Jones, though, still racing up almost 0.5 point up. That just took a nice jump up. So the Dow moving. Let me take a look on active by volume. What's moving on? NVIDIA, Broadcom, Tesla, Adobe. So all the expected people in that. Heat map's pretty neutral here so far now, so where we are seeing the moves up. Google having another decent day, it looks like here. Gold still rising. Banks are starting to level off here, so JP Morgan. Bank of America. Ally up about 1.5 points here. Morgan Stanley jumping back. So some of the ones that have been beaten up, catching up. Man, the one that's been also in play is Chewy, Woof, excuse me, on Roaring Kitty. Continuing to move up. That's another one, man. That has moved up price action wise. Another one that's seeing an 80% gain in the last few days. Okay. QQQ back up 1/4 point. So we are trying to battle it out here. Everything is holding up pretty well, Dow Jones up 0.22. Not seeing anything too crazy here. Verizon announced it's going to take up to a $1.9 billion severance charge in the third quarter. So Verizon getting hit here. U.S. has announced sanctions on 16 officials tied to Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro over claims they obstructed free and fair elections. So more there. Okay. What else important is hitting the markets as we open up here? Dow Jones now up over half a point. Adobe getting hit here. What else is going on? RUI and Rut's up over 1.5%. I brought that up, the small market caps. So it looks like everybody is listening to them. Okay. Well, that is going to take us out today, everybody. We are still moving up, so I am still feeling bullish that I am right, and we are going to see another green day going here. We will have some, as we get closer to the expiries, we could see some craziness. Let's take a last look through those, the pumpers here. Let's see what's going on in the pumpers. TNON. So you can see that's losing momentum. If it falls back below this line here, that one becomes out of play. So I do want to say that one looks like it's falling out of play here. Let's take a look at Vision Marine. That one's falling out. So that's out. That ain't going to happen. Let's see what's happening with PLCE. Again, rejected. So we are seeing those attempted pumps falling through. So that's the first sign of weakness to me. You know what I mean? Is what I look at is when we start to see that. That's our sort of first sign of weakness. And we see Summit retracing here. So my thoughts there are, as we start to see the pumpers start to fade early, it tends to lead us then a little bit into the others. The only thing, well, it is coming down a little bit. Silver would be the other one I'd look there. Bitcoin did regain 58 here, so I don't know. It looks to me like they tried to get the pumpers going this morning. When they couldn't do that, they've moved back a little bit into Bitcoin, silver, gold, all those catching a little bit of a bid here. So maybe we see some of the move out of those pumpers and people go look to see if they can move some of the real products here. We've seen WOOF become the new GME right now. Does that move up? And we see Nvidia going negative here. We see, semiconductors starting to lose the momentum that we talked about. So here comes that sell-off as we get towards 10 o'clock. And you can see QQQ starting to drop back down. It's fighting. They're all fighting here. It's not too bad. My opinion is if we can keep DXY below 101, it fares well for Bitcoin over the weekend. So that's what I'll be looking there. Tesla starting to move back towards okay, well, that's going to do it for us this morning. I will see you guys back at 1 o'clock. Good trading out there.